Welcome to the Total Country Podcast.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, hello, and welcome to the Total Country Podcast. Wherever you are in the world, thanks for joining us on the first ever edition of the pod. My name is Kevin Angel, and I do hope you are well. The aim of the show is to give you the chance to hear from some of your favourite artists, some you've never heard of, and hopefully help you create some new favourites in an at-length conversation with myself. Moving forward, I also hope to sit down and speak to pure songwriters and the team behind some of your favourite festivals as well. Each episode will be based around one interview, allowing me to deep dive into a guest's influences, songwriting process, new releases, future plans, how they got to where they are. You get the idea. I'm so pleased to say that the first episode features an English country act who I've been a fan of for a long time. And when she said yes to be my first guest, I was, as you can imagine, through the roof. Kezia Gill hails from Derby in the East Midlands in the UK and has been performing professionally for over 10 years. She came onto the British country scene in 2017 with her debut album Kezia. This edgy folk and Irish-infused debut release made a big impression on its arrival and still to this day, for me personally. There's no one else like her on the British scene currently. She's been compared by some as the UK's answer to Ashley McBryde, which certainly isn't a comment to be sniffed at. In 2019, she released her EP, Dead Ends and Detours, which was similarly well received. Also, this features an a cappella version of a track called Whiskey Drinking Woman. In January this year, she released a full band version of the song with Sarah Jury, which, if you haven't heard it, is a real must. Thanks to her successes, Kezia has toured across the UK, plays shows in Nashville, which you'll hear about in the interview, and even toured Australia, culminating in a show at the prestigious Tamworth Country Music Festival. Kezia's live performance is pretty special as well, as she has a really quite unique stage presence. Her red-haired locks, arms full of tattoos and attention-grabbing vocals can't help but draw you in. She can also write one hell of a tune as well. As you'd expect, British CMA nominations and award have followed for her, and I'm sure many more will come her way. I speak to Kezia a week before her new single is released, which comes out on the 17th of April, and it's a really new but exciting direction for her, which again, you'll hear more about in the interview. But that's enough of me talking. Without further ado, here we go. Enjoy me in conversation with the amazing Kezia Gill. So I'm here with, well, I'm not here. I'm over Skype with Kezia Gill. Kezia, how are you? Okay.
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. So prior to recording, we did touch on it, but how are you finding isolation as we record this? We don't know when we'll be allowed out again in the UK.
I think like the first few weeks it was almost like that kind of holiday feeling. It was something a bit new, something a bit different, quite exciting. I mean, I'm such a busy person. Like on one given week, I can do, 500 miles driving. I do shows, I do interviews, and then sort of just my normal day-to-day life as well. So to just stop everything instantly has been a bit of a shock to the system. I've got slight cabin fever at the moment. But I'm trying to keep myself busy.
Did you see it coming then? Did in terms of your work, did you see it sort of declining gradually, or did everything just stop, or how did it pan out for you?
The bulk of the cancellations came all at once. There was a couple of events that I had booked for the summer that sort of got a little bit nervous, and they, rather than cancel, they just postponed. So for example, one I had in April postponed to August, but then suddenly, I think it was the announcement from Boris Johnson about the pubs closing. That was kind of the final blow, and my inbox blew up in the worst possible way. And I feel so bad because I had so many weddings booked, and I feel so bad for the brides. We've managed to reschedule a few, but others are sort of on hold indefinitely. And just from a personal point of view as well, I had some amazing shows lined up for the summer, some great festivals, some of which I was headlining. So in terms of the shows to cancel, it was a real blow, but we've all got to sort of knuckle in together and get through this next few months. So it's you feel like it's all part of a bigger cause, I suppose.
Are you finding now is a good time for you to sit down and write?
Well, I have. I've actually been doing some co-writing.
Okay.
A good friend of mine, Jade Helliwell, we been sort of just like we are chatting over Skype. We've written a couple of songs now. I find with songwriting, I have to be in the mood for it. I'm definitely not one of these people that could just lock myself in a room for 5 hours a day and come out with an album. That is not how I do it. And I have to be in the mood for it, and I could be writing something and just not feel it, and I'll literally just walk away from the piano or walk away from the guitar and go, I'll leave it. I don't put any pressure on myself, because I know that when I get an idea and it's a good idea, I'll roll with it and I get really excited, but that doesn't happen all the time. So I try to keep it as chilled and as no pressure, because that's a mistake I made a few years ago leading up to my Dead Ends and Detours EP. I hadn't been doing any writing, and I was getting more and more worked up that I couldn't write a song. And then obviously that has a negative effect, because every time you sit down you're anxious, and nothing was good enough. And in the end, I actually woke up in the middle of the night one night at like 3 a.m. and wrote 2 of the songs. They just came out of nowhere. Wow. So I try to just take the pressure off a little bit now and say, look, good days, bad days. If a song's going to come, if I'm in the mood for sitting and writing a song, I will. In a quarantine situation, there are always distractions, usually Netflix. But I'm trying to remain disciplined and have some kind of routine. So I find that my daytimes, sort of your kind of 9 to 5 hours, I like to be in my studio, and whether it's creating posters or creating adverts for Facebook or designing logos for t-shirts, anything, as long as I'm being creative around the Kezia Gill brand, which is essentially what this is, then I'm happy. Good. I feel like I've done something with my day.
Have you done Tiger King on Netflix yet? Have you watched that?
Completed it, mate.
It's the best thing ever.
It really is.
So, talking about, you mentioned it earlier, going back to, was it a week before or a week after that Boris? No, it must have been the week before Boris mentioned that places were going to close down. It was when Trump did the announcement. You must know where I'm going with this.
Yes.
You had a crazy weekend. So you were never scheduled to play C2C officially, were you?
No.
But you ended up doing a live session on Bob Harris with about, was it, how many hours notice did you have?
I found out on the Friday morning that I'd been invited to play on the Saturday night. So it was a crazy rush of logistics, because I was already scheduled to play at the Country on the Clyde Festival, which is in Glasgow, which is pretty much as far away from London as you could get. So I mean, we were looking at trains, we actually looked at flights, and in the end, logistically, nothing really worked. And plus, as well, I think with the scare and the initial panic of what was going on, I didn't want to rely on a flight that may be cancelled or rely on a train that may be cancelled. So we actually drove. We finished the Bob Harris session about 9:30, and we got straight in the car. We drove through the night to get to Glasgow for about 3:30, and then I played the festival on Sunday. So it was a busy weekend. But in terms of getting that call on the Friday, it was actually one of the producers that was putting the show together last minute. I was just blown away. I was fortunate enough to have had some support from Bob Harris's show previously, which I think is why I was probably on the radar. But like you mentioned, I wasn't actually scheduled to play C2C, so I feel like I'm probably one of the only people on the planet to benefit from COVID-19. So there was something in the universe that day.
That was a great show, though, wasn't it? I listened to it at the time. Just such a good 3 hours of artists.
Yeah, and it was together. Great. I explained that I had to get up to Glasgow, so they said, "Oh no, that's fine. You can go on first," which is very much a double-edged sword. Yeah. Because you haven't got that whole hanging around, getting nervous, but you're straight in. And what was nice is I had about an hour prior to going live at 8:00. I got to chat to Bob Harris, got to meet all the production team. I met Ben Earl from the Shires. I was chatting to Twinny, and I kind of calmed down a little bit. But then as soon as it was like, you have the news at 8:00, and then you go live at 8:03. Everything is like clockwork. Yeah. So like 8:00, Bobby Pryor came in, Ben Earl, Bob Harris, everyone sat, and the producers going, "We're live in the room, 3, 2, 1," and you're like, "Oh my God, I have to sing." It was just so intense. I could feel my heart beating that much. I thought the microphone was going to pick it up because it was that loud. And Bob Harris did like a little introduction, then just kind of threw straight into me, and I thought, this is the time to just nail it. And luckily it went okay, but I was so nervous. Amazing experience though.
Was that because you've been featured on you've been on the Radio 2 playlist before, haven't you? Was that the first time you met Bob?
It was the first time I've met Bob, and it was the first time I'd done any kind of live recording, live performance on that scale.
Yeah.
So I've done radio work for my local radio, sort of Radio Derby, Radio Nottingham. I've done BBC introducing features for the East Midlands. But when you look at the kind of listener figures, and especially on that night, because everyone that should have been at the festival probably would have been tuning in, I was like, wow, this is when you don't want to play a wrong chord or don't want to forget the words. So I'm very fortunate to say that it went really well. But Bob was great. And I think that little hour we spent prior to going live just chatting, he has a way of really making you feel at ease. He really, and it sounds bizarre, but he actually just comes across exactly as he does on the radio. It's like talking to an old friend. This voice that I've grown up with and I know so well, that when he first sort of spoke to me, I was like, wow, you sound just like you do on the radio. And he said, do you know, a lot of people say that to me. That's the beauty of radio. So he made me feel at ease straight away. And I think that's why he's such a loved guy. He's so genuine, and he genuinely loves country music, and he really does invest his time into helping independent artists, and I can certainly vouch for that.
I don't know about you, but I feel like Bob is almost out of country, a little bit underappreciated. I put him up there with like John Peel. Would you say the same? He's got to be up there in terms of that sort of legendary status, surely.
I think so. I mean, I love watching music documentaries. I certainly I have a real fascination in the start of people's journeys.
Yeah.
Watching one recently about David Bowie, and it was actually Bob Harris that was one of the early advocates for David Bowie when nobody else would listen. Back when he was Ziggy Stardust. Yeah. Was just so obscure, so off the wall, so different. A lot of people said no, but it was Bob Harris that kept pushing. And he actually got David Bowie as Ziggy Stardust up to play one of his nightclub nights in central London. And the crowd booed him off stage, like they were throwing bottles at him, booed Ziggy Stardust off stage. But Bob Harris kept with it. And look at the career that he had. And I just think Bob Harris has that real belief of music, and that finds someone that he believes in, he goes all the way. And that's why I feel extremely fortunate to have him as a supporter of my music, because I feel like with that kind of weight behind you, nothing is impossible.
Of course.
So Glastonbury next.
So last year you won Best Female at the British CMA Awards, which must have been a nice surprise. You were the most nominated artist. How was that?
Well, you say it was a surprise. I was the most nominated artist of the night, I think up for 5 awards. And the format of the evening was, there was all the categories. 4 of my categories were up. And then I was due to perform. I was the last act to perform. And then the final set of categories included Best Female and Best Male. So I went through the whole evening, all 4 of my categories came up, and I didn't win anything. Yeah, it's exactly that. It was slightly dire, because even though a nomination doesn't mean a win, you automatically want to win, and you think about winning, and you kind of do think, oh, wouldn't that be lovely? And every time sort of my name was read out, I was thinking, oh, maybe this time. So 4 awards came and 4 awards went, and I had won nothing. Then I had to get up and perform, and I kind of had this attitude where I was just like, well, look, it doesn't matter now what happens. I'm just going to have to just go and do my absolute best and prove to people that I deserve to be here, and that it's not all about whether I've won or not. Yeah. So I went up with that kind of attitude, and it was amazing. I did the best. I feel like I did the best show I've ever done, because it was just so emotive. I was at the point where I was like, I haven't won anything, but let me see if I can win this crowd over. And everyone kind of got on side with me. I think people probably felt slightly disappointed for me. We just had this lovely kind of sod it attitude where we were all just having a great time and loving the music. And then it was following that set that I won Best Female. So the emotion was already extremely high. And I think I cried all the way to the stage, all